June 1941 forever changed the course of world history. When German tank columns crossed the Soviet border as part of Operation Barbarossa, the Wehrmacht expected to repeat the successes of the Lightning campaigns in Poland and France. However, German tankers encountered an unexpected challenge: Soviet T-34 and KV tanks, whose existence German intelligence had not even suspected. This encounter became a turning point in the development of tank construction and determined the nature of the war on the Eastern Front. The development of the T-34 tank began in the late 1930s at the Design Bureau of the Kharkiv Locomotive Factory, number 183, under the leadership of Mikhail Ilyich Koshkin and Alexander Alexandrovich Morozov. This project became a response to the experience of the Spanish Civil War, where Soviet light tanks T-26 and BT proved vulnerable to anti-tank artillery. Initially, the designers created the wheeled-track tank A-20, but unsatisfactory characteristics forced them to develop an alternative variant, the A-32 with exclusively tracked propulsion. It was this project that, after testing, became the basis for the T-34. On December 19, 1939, by decision of the Defense Committee, the A-32 armored vehicle was adopted for service with the designation T-34. The tank received a powerful 76mm gun, rational angles of armor inclination with a thickness of 45 mm, and a revolutionary V2 diesel engine with a power of 500 horsepower. On March 17, 1940, a demonstration of new tanks took place near the Kremlin walls before the highest leadership of the USSR, headed by Joseph Stalin, and on March 31st, the tank entered serial production. In parallel with the T-34, the heavy tank KV was being created, named after Kliment Voroshilov. Development began in late 1938 at the Leningrad Kirov plant under the leadership of Joseph Yakovlevich Kotin. Initially, two turret tanks SMK and T-100 were designed, but in parallel, an experimental single-turret variant with better characteristics was created. The first prototype of the tank, which received the designation U-0, was manufactured in August 1939 and underwent testing in battles of the Soviet-Finnish War. On December 19, 1939, the KV tank was adopted for service. During the breakthrough of Finnish fortifications, the tank did not receive a single serious penetration of the hull or turret, which confirmed the correctness of the design decisions. The KV-1 had a hull length of 6.675 meters, a combat weight of up to 47.5 tons, a maximum speed of 34 kilometers per hour, an AV-2K diesel engine with a power of 600 horsepower. The thickness of the frontal armor of the turret was 75 millimeters, and the gun mantlet 90 millimeters. Armament consisted of a 76 millimeters gun and 3 DT machine guns. The success of the T-34 project was determined by the use of a highly economical V2 diesel engine, thanks to which the medium-armored tank received high specific power. The diesel engine was safer compared to the gasoline engines of German tanks. It did not ignite from bullet hits and shrapnel. Rational angles of armor inclination became another revolutionary feature. Although the thickness of frontal armor was only 45 millimeters, thanks to the inclination at an angle of 60 degrees, its shell resistance increased by 1.5 to 2 times. Wide tracks provided excellent cross-country ability on rough terrain and snow, which was critically important in the conditions of the Soviet theater of military operations. The T-34 tank had, by 1940 standards, very powerful armament, a 76 mm gun. In its class of medium tanks, in terms of the combination of main combat qualities, armor protection, mobility, and armament, the T-34 was the best in the world. The armor of the KV was 75 mm of hardened steel from all angles. German 37 mm anti-tank guns could not penetrate it even at point-blank range, and 50 mm guns, no farther than 500 meters. At the same time, the 76 mm F-34 gun allowed engaging any German tank of that period from a distance of 1.5 kilometers. By the end of 1941, all armies in the world lacked weapons capable of effectively fighting the KV. The tank weighed twice as much as the largest German tank of the time, and its appearance on the battlefield caused panic among German troops. Before the invasion of the Soviet Union, German armed forces did not know about the two newly developed Soviet tanks T-34 and KV-1. As a result, they were surprised when they first encountered them in the first battles in June 1941. On June 23, 1941, in the Ryazany clash, the Soviet 2nd Tank Division, which had about 50 KV-1 tanks, met the German 6th Panzer Division. The encounter with Soviet heavy tanks KV-1, against which only 88mm anti-aircraft guns proved effective, became an unpleasant surprise for the enemy. A legendary episode of this battle was the story of 1 KV-1 tank, which on June 24th to 25th blocked the supply road of units of the German 6th Panzer Division. German anti-tank guns were powerless against its armor, and only the use of heavy anti-aircraft guns allowed stopping the Soviet machine. From June 23 to 29, 1941, the largest tank battle in the history of World War II took place in the Dubno-Lutsk-Brody Triangle. On the Soviet side, 3,128 tanks of all types participated in the battle, including over 800 T-34 and KV tanks. In the Ryazany battle, Soviet forces of the 2nd Tank Division on June 23, 1941, attacked and crushed units of the German 6th Panzer Division near Skodvile. Light German Panzer 35 T tanks and their anti-tank armament were ineffective against Soviet armored vehicles. The 43rd Tank Division, which had T-34 and KV tanks in the forward ranks, in 4 hours of fighting pushed back the German 11th Panzer Division by 30 kilometers and reached Dubno. Standard German anti-tank weapons proved ineffective against the new Soviet machines. Attempts to destroy T-34 and KV were aimed at their immobilization. German forces shot at their tracks, then fired at them with field artillery and anti-aircraft guns. German tankers quickly realized that their Panzer III with 37mm and 50mm guns, as well as short-barreled Panzer IV with 75mm guns, were unable to penetrate the armor of Soviet tanks at normal combat distances. The only effective means were heavy 88mm Flak 18/36/37 anti-aircraft guns, which were used in an anti-tank role. After the start of the war with the Soviet Union, German forces encountered new Soviet tanks T-34 and KV-1. To study Soviet tanks, a special commission was created by German military and technical specialists, which included leading German designers of armored vehicles, including Ferdinand Porsche and Heinrich Niepkamp. German engineers studied in detail all the advantages and disadvantages of the T-34, after which they decided on the need to implement sloped armor, running gear with large road wheels, and wide tracks in German tank construction. The result of this analysis was the development of the Panther tank, which in many ways copied the design solutions of the T-34. The creation of the heavy Tiger I tank was also accelerated to counter the KV. These machines appeared at the front only in 1942 to 1943. Despite the technical advantage, Soviet tank forces suffered catastrophic losses in the first months of the war. The reasons for the failed counteroffensive attempt and large losses were the lack of air cover, lack of organization of interaction of tank forces with other branches of the military, and lack of experience of commanders. German tank divisions were comprehensive formations that included not only tanks, motorized infantry, artillery, but also constant air support. The Red Army did not have such well-coordinated structures. The actions of mechanized corps were not coordinated, reconnaissance was not conducted, not all units managed to reach starting positions. There was little motorized infantry, artillery preparation was conditional. In the battles of 1941, the shortcomings of the T-34 were revealed. A cramped two-man turret with insufficient visibility, and as a rule, the absence of radio communication. The tank commander was forced to combine his duties with the duties of a gunner, which significantly reduced the effectiveness of combat use. The weak points of the KV-1 were the poor quality of units and assemblies, poor visibility from the tank, an unsuccessful gearbox, and especially many complaints about the air filter. Tankers often could not reach the battlefield due to technical malfunctions. The KV had no particular advantages over the T-34. The tanks were equal in firepower, both were invulnerable to anti-tank artillery. At the same time, the T-34 had better dynamic characteristics, was cheaper and simpler to produce. By June 22, 1941, the Red Army had deployed nearly 1,000 T-34 tanks and over 500 KV tanks. By the end of December 1941, they had lost 2,300 T-34 tanks and over 900 KV tanks. In the Battle of Dubno-Lutsk-Brody, over 2,500 tanks were destroyed on the Soviet side. German losses were significantly smaller, 260 combat vehicles, most of which were back in combat readiness after repair. For every knocked-out German tank, there were 21 Soviet ones. This ratio demonstrates not the technical superiority of German tanks, but the organizational and tactical advantage of the Wehrmacht. The number of non-combat losses was unprecedented. On one hand, Soviet Mechanized Corps lost most of their T-34 and KV tanks during the first week, but on the other hand, German reports do not note such massive destruction in combat. Many tanks were abandoned by crews due to technical malfunctions, lack of fuel, ammunition, or due to loss of orientation in conditions of chaotic retreat. The absence of evacuation means and repair units led to the fact that even tanks with minor damage had to be blown up or abandoned. By the summer of 1943, German Tiger tanks with powerful anti-shell armor and powerful armament made the effectiveness of the 76mm tank guns of Soviet T-34 tanks insufficient. German tanks fired at Soviet ones from a distance of 1,500 meters, while 76mm F-34 guns could hit Tigers and Panthers only from a distance of maximum 500 to 600 meters. In January 1944, the T-34-85 tank was adopted by the Red Army. An 85mm gun and a commander's cupola with observation devices were installed. The new cast 3-man turret had enhanced armor protection up to 90mm. The T-34-85 modification significantly increased combat effectiveness. The crew increased to 5 people, which allowed the commander to focus on battle management. The firing range of the gun reached 5.2 kilometers, which made it possible to counter German heavy tanks. By the end of 1942, the KV, armed with a 76mm gun, lost its advantage after the appearance of heavy PZ.VI Tiger tanks in the enemy. This led to the development of modernized variants with more powerful armament. KV tanks became the progenitors of heavy IS-2 tanks, which became the best in their class in the entire history of World War II. It was the heavy tanks of the IS, Joseph Stalin, series that provided Soviet forces with superiority in heavy armored vehicles in the final stage of the war. The T-34 became the most mass-produced Soviet tank. In 1940, 112 machines were manufactured. In 1941, 2,996. In 1942, 12,527. In 1943, 15,821. In 1944, 14,648. In 1945, 12,551. In total, 61,362 T-34 tanks of all modifications were produced in 1940 to 1946. From May 1942, a tank rolled off the assembly line every 30 minutes, daily. A train of armored vehicles went to the front. Such productivity was ensured at the cost of enormous efforts of workers of evacuated factories in the Urals and Siberia, who worked under extremely difficult conditions. During the war, the design of tanks changed toward simplification. Various substitutes for scarce materials were used. For example, when there were interruptions in the supply of rubber bandages, they began to produce steel-cast road wheels with internal shock absorption. The shortage of V2 diesel engines was even compensated by installing M17F aviation carburetor engines. The T-34 tank had a certain impact on the outcome of the war and on the further development of world tank construction. Thanks to the combination of its combat qualities, the T-34 was recognized by many specialists and military experts as one of the best tanks of World War II. The T-34, until the end of 1942, to one degree or another surpassed German medium tanks PZ, KPFW-3 and PZ, KPFW-4 in the level of protection and power of artillery armament. This forced Germany to sharply intensify work on creating a worthy antidote. The appearance of the T-34 and KV was an unpleasant surprise for the German command, which led to a revision of the entire concept of tank construction. Attempts to copy the design solutions of the T-34 showed that Soviet engineers had created a balanced and technological design that was difficult to surpass. The T-34 tank is the most famous Soviet tank and one of the most recognizable symbols of World War II. Monuments with T-34 tanks are installed in hundreds of cities of the former Soviet Union and European countries where battles took place. The history of the confrontation between Soviet T-34 and KV tanks and German forces demonstrates that technical superiority alone does not guarantee victory. A well-coordinated system of crew training, organization of interaction of various branches of the military, logistics support, and repair is needed. It was these lessons that were learned by the Soviet command, which allowed effectively using the potential of armored forces in the future. The encounter of German tank forces with Soviet T-34 and KV in June 1941 became a turning point in tank warfare. The technical superiority of Soviet machines proved to be a surprise for the Wehrmacht, which until then had no worthy competitors on the battlefields of Europe. However, the initial period of the war showed that excellent tanks alone are not enough. Organizational chaos, lack of experience of command staff, weak interaction with other branches of the military, and logistics problems led to catastrophic losses of Soviet tank formations. At the same time, the appearance of the T-34 and KV forced Germany to fundamentally reconsider its approaches to tank construction, which led to the creation of Panthers and Tigers. The technological arms race accelerated, and Soviet designers continued to improve their machines, creating the T-34-85 and heavy tanks of the IS series. The history of the T-34 and KV is not only a history of technical progress, but also a history of millions of people who created, maintained, and fought in these tanks. Their efforts, courage, and professionalism transformed technical superiority into strategic victory, which forever changed the course of World War II. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.